Have you noticed that politicians struggle to enact the things they run on? That regardless of who wins elections, lawmakers cannot pass whatever legislation they like. They find themselves bound by what is popular, or at least their sense of it. They can only act within a narrow set of ideas, and that range is called the Overton window. And on the Overton Window podcast, we look at issues around the country and talk to the people who change what is politically possible. Now, we've spoken with our guest today about the massive change that has gone on in school choice policy over the past few years. Corey DeAngelis is the National Director of Research at the American Federation for Children and is the loudest voice for school choice. And he has a new book out, The Parent Revolution. And I want to talk about what's next. Welcome, Corey.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So, the book is about the shift in the Overton windows towards school choice. We now have a number of states that have universal school choice policies where parents are given scholarships to send their kid wherever they want. A key part of the book is about the red state strategy that led to that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, look, I'll just point out really quickly, I did dedicate the book to Randy Weingarten and the teachers' unions for overplaying their hand and awakening a sleeping giant, which happens to be parents who want more of a say in their kids' education. We now have 11 states with universal school choice. And if you want to take Ted Cruz's advice on the back, he says, ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book, because it is really their fault for keeping the schools closed as long as possible. They were fear-mongering every step of the way. They were lobbying the CDC to keep the schools closed as long as possible. They were trying to hold children's education hostage to secure ransom payments from taxpayers. Their plan backfired. Parents got to see what was happening, and now we have a universal school choice, a parent revolution unfolding right before our very eyes. And when I talk about the red state strategy in the book is that for far too long in education policy, reformers were trying to appeal to Democrats, what I would say too much. We were using the lefty arguments to pass school choice, but it wasn't translating to Democrat votes. I think those are good arguments, that it is true that the least advantaged are stuck in the worst government schools. School choice is an equalizer. Government schools are segregated. This should lead to more equality of opportunity. And the problem is, that could have turned off some of the Republicans at the time. If you market it, school choice, as a bipartisan thing, well, I think it's true that it is. And voters from all political parties support it. It just so happens to be that the Democrat Party is a wholly owned subsidiary of the teachers union. You think about Randy Weingarten, who I dedicated the book to. In 2022, her union, the American Federation of Teachers, 99.97% of their campaign contributions went to Democrats. It's a complex money laundering scheme. It ought to be illegal, this incestuous relationship between the teachers unions and the Democrat Party. So you have the elected officials listening to power and not to their actual constituents, the parents. Well, with the red state strategy, the idea is to lean into parental rights as a political winner for Republicans. If you can actually get to something that I coin a phrase in the book called bipartisanship through hyperpartisanship. Now, look, that might sound counterintuitive at first, that how can something that is hyperpartisan in the short run and polarizing lead to something that is nonpartisan among elected officials in the long run? The way that it works out is something that we saw in Virginia with Terry McAuliffe. In a state that apparently went 10 points to Biden the year before, Terry McAuliffe, the former governor of Virginia, who was in a bluish state, he lost to Glenn Youngkin on the issue of education by 6 points with those voters, and that was the number 2 issue in that election, according to Washington Post exit polling. Why did that happen? Well, Terry went on the debate stage, the final one, and said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. Now, Glenn Youngkin ran on that issue. Everyone remembers that is the biggest that was his deplorables moment. And parents didn't forget it. In fact, the next day on CNN after the election, a mom in Virginia actually said that it was the nail in the coffin moment for her when Terry McAuliffe quadrupled down, and on election night, he had Randy Weingarten stumping for him the night before the election. The school closer was his campaign closer. And so, look, in Virginia had their schools closed almost as long as California. It was actually pretty bad. And they had a bunch of school board battles there. The parents weren't happy about divisive concepts in the classroom. They didn't want Marxist ideology and critical race theory. They wanted sexually inappropriate content out of classrooms for young children. They wanted age-appropriate content. And the status quo tripled down, quadrupled down on their anti-parent rhetoric. They invoked, under the Patriot Act, the National School Boards Association sent a letter to Biden saying, we need to label and investigate parents for domestic terrorism, which was an attempt to bully and silence parents into submission. They were basically telling parents, you better sit down and shut up because you are a nuisance, and we don't want to listen to you as a partner. And so I'm thankful the parents didn't heed that advice. Instead, they emboldened them to fight back even harder. Now, 26 states have left the National School Boards Association. It's a great turn of events. We should rename them the RSBA, the Regional School Boards Association, at this point. But the more that the Republicans lean into parental rights as a political winner, the more it becomes a form of political suicide for Democrats to oppose it. And we're seeing some more defections when it comes to Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, sitting legislators in Georgia and North Carolina flipping from the Democrats to the GOP. We're seeing J.B. Pritzker, he even answered a candidate survey last year, or in 2022, saying that he would support the same scholarship program that he vowed to eliminate. And one more thing before the next question is something that Milton Friedman famously said. It doesn't really matter whether it was a true change of heart by Shapiro and Pritzker or whether it was them just reading the tea leaves. What Milton Friedman said was that the way that you change things is not about getting the right people into office. Obviously, that helps if they're advancing the right policies towards freedom. But the way that you truly change things is by creating a climate of opinion where it becomes politically profitable for the wrong people to do the right thing. And I think we're reaching that escape velocity where the political winds are shifting towards school choice, that we have high-profile Democrats feeling compelled, for whatever reason, to signal public support for school choice. The Overton window is shifting on our side, and that's why this parent revolution is really leading to the politicians to listen to us, finally. There's a new special interest group in town, one that represents the kids. It's the parents having a say in their own kids' education, and the revolution will continue because parents care about their kids more than anybody else, certainly more than bureaucrats sitting in offices hundreds of miles away.
When you say hyperpartisanship leads to bipartisanship, have you found that to be the case? There are a number of school choice programs, universal school choice programs. Have they been able to get some Democratic support?
Yeah, so there has been, the political winds are shifting with signaling support, but it's not just signaling support. So like Josh Shapiro, he ultimately caved to the unions, but he did go on Fox News last year reiterating his support for Lifeline scholarships. And there's been a renewed push. He still says he supports it. So this is a vast change in the dialogue, whereas before it was Democrats saying, no way, that would steal money from public schools. They're usually usual talking points. Now, even Democrats who are up in the polls, they feel compelled to support parental rights in education, because I think Josh Shapiro was looking over at Virginia and said, I don't want a Terry McAuliffe moment to happen to me. Even Doug Mastriano, the Republican out there who did support school choice, right before Shapiro changed his education platform, guess what? Doug Mastriano was calling him a hypocrite. He said, you went to private school. Why don't you support school choice? I do. And right after that, Josh Shapiro changed his education platform. So again, it doesn't matter why that happened. I would hope it's a true change of heart. But we've also had legislative victories with bipartisan support, too. You think about, look, Louisiana, they're still going back and forth with the bill to empower all families with education freedom. The main barrier in Louisiana was their governor, Bell Edwards, a Democrat. Now there's a new governor, a Republican, Jeff Landry. He's pushing the issue hard. But the bill passed the House easily, 72-32. Supermajority vote. Didn't need a single Democrat. The Democrats could have all voted no, and they still would have passed it easily. But 20% of the Democrats in the House in Louisiana voted for the bill. And we're not talking tiny school choice program just, for a few kids. This is everybody. This is no more picking winners and losers. And so the Overton window has shifted in another way, whereas for decades on school choice, yeah, we had a lot of states with some school choice, but it was really incremental reform, which, look, we'll take the W, we'll take any win we can get, but it was very small potatoes compared to what's happening now. Now it's, before 2021, we had 0 states with Milton Friedman's vision of universal school choice for everybody. Now we have 11. You might say that's only 11, but that's more than 20% of states in 3 years. In the past 3 years, we've had more advancements on school choice than the preceding 3 decades. One more example is in Florida. 2023, 11% of the House Democrats voted for full-throated universal school choice in the Sunshine State. And also in Florida, you might not remember this because DeSantis blew out his opponent in 2022 by 20 points. Charlie Crist, who picked the teachers union boss as his running mate for lieutenant governor. That was a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him. It didn't work out for him. Charlie Crist lost by a lot. But DeSantis in 2018, he barely won. A lot of people don't remember this. It would have been a totally different state if he didn't win, and the nation would have been worse off for it too, because we wouldn't have been able to point to Florida as a beacon of hope in the era of COVID with their schools being open. It didn't lead to the doomsday that the blue states were projecting. But DeSantis barely won, and the next day in the Wall Street Journal, there was a headline that said, "School choice moms tipped the governor's race for DeSantis." And what they meant was they were talking about CNN exit polling, of all places, finding that black moms in particular came out swinging for DeSantis much higher than expected, because his opponent, Andrew Gillum, a black Democrat actually, he said that he was going to get rid of the scholarship program benefiting over 100,000 kids, disproportionately low-income, non-white families in Florida. Those parents who might not have agreed with DeSantis on anything else saw that this was such an important issue. They didn't want to lose their scholarship for their kids. They wanted them to get a better opportunity than they had themselves, and so they turned that into a single-issue vote. And so Republicans can win votes on the issue. It's the right thing to do. It's the logical thing to do. Monopolies always produce bad results, higher costs and worst outcomes. We see this in the government school system too. You're assigned to a place based on where you live. We shouldn't even call them public schools. They're not open to the public. Families have gone to jail for lying about their address to get into better so-called public schools. They're not public goods. They're rivalrous and excludable. If there are any economists listening to this podcast, I'm sure there are.
In the state of Michigan, if you're not in their district, they can charge you tuition. If you want to visit.
It's my home state of Texas, too. They do the same thing. So they're not free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. But they do have tuition if you want to go to a different place. But also, they're run by the government. They're regulated by the government. They're compelled by the government. They're assigned by the government. They're funded by the government, or at least the taxpayer. They are government schools, not public schools.
So success is impending in Texas, and part of the reason why you've been successful is that there were Republicans who voted against school choice, which in a world where you have a red state strategy where you need Republicans to pass these, that's a major problem. Yeah. And you went out and worked with some people to make sure that those Republicans did not return to the legislature.
Yeah, they got torched. It was a political earthquake that rocked Texas on Super Tuesday, and it was their own damn fault. They voted against their own party platform, and every single poll was telling them what was about to happen. They could have changed their ways, but they were so drunk on power, they thought they were untouchable. But guess what? Out of the 21 who voted with all the Democrats against their own party platform, 5 of them didn't run for re-election. They saw the writing on the wall. There was polling from University of Houston, University of Texas Austin, UT Tyler, Dallas Morning News of all places, Texas Tribune, Morning Consult, consistently finding, even if they use the teachers union's loaded term of vouchers, which is less popular than scholarships or other school choice or education savings accounts, they still found a majority of Texans across tons of demographic characteristics supporting school choice. And there was also a poll showing that Republican primary voters in particular were going to not be happy and not vote for the guys who voted against school choice. 10 of the 13 anti-school choice incumbents that we targeted for voting against parental rights in education lost their seats outright on election night or were forced into runoffs. And most of them that were forced into runoffs that are coming up this month, May 28th, they are forced into those runoffs into second place. So that translates to a 77% win rate, which is almost impossible. Incumbents usually win, historically, 95% of the time. They have name recognition, they have funding advantages, they've just been in the system for a while, they know how it works. We inverted that trend in Texas. We're going to have the votes for universal school choice next year. Finally, in my home state, the Lone Star State, the state of freedom in other ways, will finally have education freedom too. I will point out, the argument that they made was really bogus. I mean, they were already the guys that were endorsed by the state affiliate of the NEA. 18 of the 21 no votes were endorsed by the state affiliate of the NEA, the same union that on Easter, the Texas State Teachers Association, they tweeted out, Happy Trans Awareness Day. And so the conservative voters weren't happy about that either. And in some cases, although these guys were all endorsed by the union before, guess what? That same union didn't make any public endorsements for Republicans this year. Same thing with Randy Weingarten's affiliate, the Federation of Teachers in Texas. They endorsed a bunch of the anti-school choice incumbents in 2022. In 2024, they didn't endorse any of them. Now, why would they do that? It's because they're seeing it's now a GOP litmus test issue. They know their radical left ideology and affiliation is not helpful in the primary races, so they're trying to help them in private ways. They've done phone banking for them. They funded a PAC called Defend Rural Texas PAC, which is actually set up in Austin, not a rural place. And so they funnel money privately to these guys. They still lost. They've also there've been school districts that are illegally influencing elections in Texas, which we're cracking down on them with the Liberty Justice Center too. But one more thing is the argument that they'll say to try to have their cake and eat it too, the Republicans voting against their own platform, is they'll say, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, trust me guys, but I'm going to vote against my own party platform because my excuse is that I live in a rural area.
Oh yes, I've heard that many times.
They'll actually say this.
My superintendents don't want this.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I'm going to listen to the special interests that control me, and I'm not going to listen to actual parents. So that's the first part of the problem. But the second part is they'll actually say this out loud. They'll say, my public school is the only option. My parents can't use this, so it's not for us. But then the next breath, with a straight face, they'll look you in the eye, and they'll try to say, this is going to defund my fantastic rural public school. Well, hold up. If it's so fantastic, you should have nothing to worry about. You should be the last person making this argument. But two, more importantly, if it's true that no one can go anywhere else, if there's no other options, who's going to take the money somewhere else? So you can't have it can't be both of these things. It's like that 2-button meme where the guy's thinking about what button to press. One of the buttons is public school is my only option. The other button is it's going to destroy my public schools. It can't be both. They can't both be true, but they can both be false. And they are both false because with school choice, the public schools do get better. And then two, with education savings accounts, you can use the funding for lower cost startup options. And private schools do increase in areas that have school choice. Supply meets demand. And once you put the money in the hands of the parents, supply will come as well. And we saw this play out in Florida. I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal in an article called The Teachers Union's the Little Red School, I've written too many in the Wall Street Journal, that's the problem, but the Little Red Schoolhouse could do with a little competition. I cite data from Florida, from Step Up for Students, the main scholarship granting organization out there, where they posted data showing that the number of private schools in the most rural counties in Florida has doubled since they've expanded school choice. So when you build it, they will come. If families have the power, supply will meet that demand. And guess what? The 9 most rural states in the country, including West Virginia, they already have some form of private school choice. So it wasn't an impediment there. And if anything, if you ask rural voters that they support school choice, they have higher support of vouchers, even if you use that term, than people in urban areas.
So the last time I looked at the numbers is that schools, government schools, were the 3rd most expensive government service. It was entitlements, national defense, government schools. And there are a lot of people who depend on the current model that we have, the teachers union, obviously, which you butt heads with, but a lot of other people who are really vested in making sure that this system continues. And they can't be happy with the success that you've been having on this issue. And just like how you got the people standing in the way of school choice unelected in Texas, I'm sure they're looking at those Democratic voters who supported school choice in Louisiana and in Virginia and saying those guys have a target on their back. That's not their only recourse. How is the blob fighting back?
Yeah, there's control freaks, aren't they? They want to control the monopoly on funding, but they also want to control the minds of other people's children. That's why the parent revolution is so important, because even if you don't have kids in the system yourself, even if you don't have grandkids in the system, even if you're homeschooling, well, the left has figured out that they can infiltrate the government school system, educating 40 to 50 million kids a year across the country for 13 years of their lives, for 7 hours a day. They can use that system to raise other people's kids. The left doesn't even have to have their own kids anymore. They can use the school system to raise other people's kids and still be able to shape the future of our country in a more socialist direction. Well, we need to fight back. We got to fight, strike at the root. And you think Hollywood has a big impact on culture? No, it's not as big as the impact of the government school system, because these are young, impressionable minds. And so if you care even about taxes or another policy that as a free market reform, if you're not interested in education, this has downstream effects, because these kids that go through this system, they become adults. And guess what? They go and vote. So we have to empower families to take back the schools if you want to shape the direction of the country. But in places like Georgia, when Misha Maynard bucked the party trend and voted for school choice, guess what they put on Twitter? They had another Democrat from her own party put a check on Twitter and said, if you primary her, I'm going to write your name down on this check, basically threatening to take her out and using the force of the teachers' unions against them. But if Democrats are smart, they will lock arms just like the parents have to break free from the stranglehold of the teachers' unions once and for all. Because when it's one person, hey, they might be able to take one person out. But if you had all the Democrats say, you know what, screw the union, let's listen to our actual constituents, let's do the morally acceptable thing, let's fight for the kids and not the employees. Well, if there was enough of the Democrats, they all said, let's do the right thing, the unions would be powerless. They wouldn't be able to control them anymore, because where else are the unions going to go? The Republicans already support school choice. The unions would have to shift strategy and start to fight for, I don't know, maybe things that they're supposed to fight for. Maybe they'd fight for just protecting the teachers and not trying to get radical left ideology into the classrooms. And maybe they want to try to fight so much about control about other people's children. So this is all going to happen because one party picks up the football and earns the moniker of the Parents' Party. If the Republicans continue to lean into this, like we saw with Glenn Youngkin, the blueprint for success on the issue of parental rights in education, you're going to see more Democrats have an incentive, at least, to defect on the issue. And a lot of things happening right now, like with Louisiana, I called some of this in the book before it went to print. So we're seeing more defections. That's good news. In a highly polarized environment in the short run, I'll take any bipartisan support we can get, and I'll give you kudos for it, even though some conservatives might be upset when I write about it in the Wall Street Journal about Josh Shapiro and what he did. But at the end of the day, that wasn't an endorsement to go vote for him. That was shining a spotlight on something to try to make sure he stays true to his word, put a spotlight in the Wall Street Journal on it. And guess what? The editorial board in the Wall Street Journal just wrote about the Pennsylvania bill being considered again. So the momentum's picking back up, and at the end of the day, if you weren't serious about what you said, Josh Shapiro, for example, and you turn back on your word, yes, that's no good. We don't want that to happen, but that could be used against politicians who lie, and lying is not good, being a hypocrite's not good, and you might lose your seat. So the incentive is for politicians now to listen to the new interest group, the parents who want more of a say in their kids' education.
What else can you use to strengthen your case and win more states?
I mean, this is almost kind of like it's something that's once it pick up
the parent revolution. Make sure
pick up the book, and give one to your nearest teachers union boss or your school board member. You might have a copy today. It's on Amazon actually right now for 25% off. I don't know how long that's going to last. I really don't. They haven't told me how long these limited time deals work. But the Parent Revolution you can get on Amazon basically anywhere else. But look, a lot of this momentum kind of is self-propelling. It will continue to go once enough people sign up for these initiatives. So once something passes, I would say the next step is get as many people to benefit as possible, because once the money is in the hands of the parents and not in the politicians' hands, it becomes really hard and unlikely that the politicians will ever be able to take that money back from the parents. So you want to create beneficiaries of the funding. We've seen that play out in Florida. We've seen that play out in Arizona. In Arizona, the government website broke down because so many parents wanted the school choice initiative. They all flooded the system in the first day. It broke down. You can say that's because it was a government system and they don't work well with anything. They're inefficient, but it's actually true. Now 80,000 families in a couple of years signed up for universal school choice in Arizona. So in places like that, you can take the money to the public school if you want. If you like your public school, you can keep your public school, but for real this time, unlike with your doctor. But if not, you can take that money to a private charter or home-based education option. So I would say continue making the logical case, continue making the moral case, and don't be afraid to call out the radicals ruining our schools right now, who would rather focus on indoctrination as opposed to education. When they try to bully you and silence you into submission, fight back even harder, because this is so important to the socialists running the schools right now that they know this is the most important policy issue of our time. Some would say it's the civil rights issue of our time. But for conservatives and independents even, those who don't buy this nonsense that your kids belong to the government, that the parents are the true experts, it's important because this is how you take our country back. It's going to continue a leftward socialist shift if the schools are run by people who think that the government is the solution to all of our problems. They're wrong, and parents know they're wrong. And I'm thankful that parents have picked up the football and really started a revolution, a peaceful one, that we can win, and we are winning. We're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning.
Well, let's talk more about that. Where is the parent revolution headed next?
Yeah, so we just talked about Louisiana. I expect they'll be the next state to go universal on school choice. You look at Tennessee, they came very close this year, but they have this weird committee structure where, the bill had enough votes in the Senate, had enough votes in the House from what I heard, but they have all these different committees. Like in some states, you have one committee. You go to the education committee, then it goes to the floor, and then that's it. Yeah. In Tennessee, you got to go all these different committees, and they got bottled up in one committee that didn't have the votes, and so it got blocked there. But I think Governor Bill Lee has said he supports people who he's going to go out and might do an Abbott or Governor Reynolds thing where he engages in primary elections over the issue. And then the House Speaker, Cameron Sexton in Tennessee, says he supported the bill too. So maybe he doesn't appoint the same people to the committees who blocked school choice last time. So the short answer is it's going to be red states that haven't done so already, because this has become a GOP litmus test issue. Even in 2022, in Tennessee, 10 of the Republicans that were running in the House were endorsed or funded by the teachers union, and 9 of them lost. It has become a political kiss of death, and I think that's why in Texas, the Republicans did not want the endorsement this year from the radical left teachers unions, because they knew that would hurt them at the ballot box with the Republican primary voters. So I think that's good news too. Like, it's another indication that the winds are shifting towards our side, that we're in places where you used to have bipartisan embracing the bipartisan candidates embracing the teachers unions. Now they're seeing them as an icky thing that they don't want to associate with, even though they're taking support privately. That's good news in the end.
Yeah. So you mentioned the strategy right now is bipartisanship through hyperpartisanship. There's been a number of victories. You've gotten some interest in Democrats on this one. Building up case, building up the momentum. We're going to talk about something that is hard. It's predictions. And you think this is going to win. This is going to be. So when does this pass in California and New York?
So we have a federal bill called the Educational Choice for Children Act. That's one. So one way to get school choice in California is to move to Florida.
Yes.
So that's one way to do it. That's the fastest way to do it. But there
Arizona,
is
closer.
Yeah, for Arizona. But don't take your voting record with you unless you're a conservative that likes free markets. But Arizona is much closer. But there is a bill in Congress right now. It has 150 co-sponsors, all Republicans in the House, including the Speaker, Mike Johnson. But it's called the Educational Choice for Children Act. It would supercharge the school choice momentum already happening in red states while expanding it to families in blue states as the tax credit. So you get some of your federal tax money back to use for K-12 education expenses. It's not government dollars, it's your money. You're getting it back in the form of a tax credit. And so that's one way to kind of move the needle into blue states. But then also you can pass school choice on the ballot. They tried this in California, don't get me wrong. They didn't get enough signatures. But you can circumvent the union-dominated legislature in deep blue states where they're never going to pass it in the short run with union-controlled candidates still holding office, in the short run at least. And so you can circumvent that, put it on the ballot, put it directly to the people. Now, the unions have a lot of money to try to influence the outcome of those ballot initiatives too, so that's not a perfect solution either. The best solution is that long-term strategy, the red state strategy, even in blue states. If the Republicans win some votes on the issue, maybe some of the Democrats come along, but we also live in 50 laboratories of democracy. They're working as the founders envisioned in red states right now. Maybe the blue states will come along as well. And maybe if not, some of the blue states will flip to red states, and then some more Democrats will come along on the issue. So, look, I don't know when it's going to happen in California. You could also pass local vouchers. So, look, we have school districts that some of them are controlled in California by Republicans. Chino Valley Unified, for example, they passed a policy not to keep secrets from parents. The state wanted if a child changed their gender at school, they wanted the school to keep the secret from a parent. Chino Unified passed what I thought was a simple policy of if the child changes their gender at school, you better tell the parent. It's their kid, it's not your kid. And they fought against that at the state level. I mean, it's insane. I'm on Liberty Justice Center's board, and we represented Chino Unified School District on this case. But you could try to pass local vouchers, too. They tried this in Douglas County, Colorado, for example. It passed. The courts, controlled by leftists, struck it down. So that's another issue altogether, the courts being controlled by people who oppose school choice, too. But why not try? Why not try to pass a local voucher to have the local funding for because education is funded through local, state, and federal levels. The state bills are passed with state funding following the child. You could have a local voucher follow the child as well. So those are some, I know it's a long-winded answer to a short question because it's a complicated question, because I don't have a crystal ball, but the best hope that we have for universal school choice in all 50 states is going to be bipartisanship through hyperpartisanship. The Republicans need to win on the issue because politicians respond more to power than logic. We need the Democrats to come along, some of them are, by listening to the needs of their constituents. They need to feel the pain where it hurts, at the ballot box, in a nonviolent way, obviously. Figuratively speaking, they need to feel the pain when it comes to losing votes on the issue.